I'm calling to order this meeting of the Silver City Town Council. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. I'd like to recognize we have Police Chief Portillo here with us and our Code Enforcement Officer Manny Howdy with us. And we have Fire Chief Lambert and also our Deputy Chief Fire Prevention Officer Marshall. And we also have Mr. Rosale, the Acting Director of the Silver City Museum, and we'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. The next item on the agenda is changes to the agenda. Do any of the councilors want to make changes? Next on the agenda is council comments. First tonight will be Councilor Cano.
Thank you, Mayor. I have kind of a long thing today because I have several things to talk about. First, I want to talk about National Night Out, which was the project that we did for Charles Charter Day in District 4. It was a really, really good event. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. There were some challenges because in the middle of monsoon season, of course, but it was a lot of fun. The people who attended enjoyed themselves. There were a lot of smiles. I know that Officer Lopez is already planning for next year, so that's a really good thing. I know one of our departments is going to be working really hard so they can try to beat the other one. I'm not going to name any names. But I want to thank a whole bunch of people, and I want to do that publicly. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Assistant Town Manager James Marshall. He did a lot of work getting permits and paperwork done, so I really appreciate that. Chief Lambert and the fire department, who were available several times to help me move things and bring things and set up and tear down, which I really appreciated. There are not even enough words to thank the next three people, and that's Chief Portillo, Officer Leticia Lopez, and Officer Manuel Howdy Jr. The three of them are amazing. If you want to do an activity in town, you want those three people on your committee, because they know what they're doing, and they're energetic, and they keep a smile on their face even when things are going crazy. And I really, really appreciate the work that you did, and also the rest of the officers who were there to help set up and tear down and be a part of the event. I'd like to thank Commissioner Chris Ponce and his family. They came to cook and to serve the hot dogs that we passed out, as did school board member Patrick Kahn. Both of them represent an area of District 4, so it was good for them to see some of their constituents as well. Also serving that evening were New Mexico Wilderness Alliance fellow Grecia Nunez, who came from Las Cruces to do that, and my mother, Patricia Cano. I appreciate her. She just pretty much did all the things that I really needed to do but couldn't do, so I really appreciate that. The Copper Country Senior Olympics were a co-sponsor of this event, specifically Games Coordinator Mario Quintana, board members Preston Harper and Ron Reed, and member Lencho Anaya. All four of them worked really hard all day long to make sure that the things went as smoothly as possible. Our park supervisor, Jesus Alviad, and his parks guys, first of all, it was a Saturday, which is, not normally a day that they should have to work, but they were there. They were there constantly. They had to come back and forth several times, and they also do their job with a smile on their face, and I really appreciate that. Councilor Ray, he made some donations to the event, and he also brought the Vietnam Vets number 358 to be a part of the event and to present the colors, and I really appreciate you, so thank you. Mayor Ladner and Councilor Dyson were both in attendance. Unfortunately, we had a mic issue, so neither one of them got to speak, but I was really thankful that you were there. The Grant County Chamber of Commerce, the Silver City Radio, Grant County Beat, and the Silver City Daily Press were all involved with publicity. The Community Foundation got several nonprofits to be a part of the celebration, including El Refugio, SAS, HMS, Girl Scouts of the Desert Southwest, the Fraternal Order Police and the Firefighters Union, and the Mexico Wilderness Alliance. So thank you to all of you who have participated. Like I said, we're already planning for next year, so hopefully more people will want to get involved next year. Last week, I was part of Senator Heinrich's Energy Summit, which was held in Albuquerque. It was a time to discuss a lot of different energy issues and to learn a lot of new things. I learned a lot about retrofitting of historic buildings, which I didn't know anything about before, so that was kind of a cool thing. I also got to be a part of a press conference with Michelle Lujan Grisham, our governor, Senator Heinrich, and 2 other elected officials, and we all talked about different projects in our community that had to do with Energy Summit. My contribution to that was talking about the improvements that are going to happen at our library and the partnership with the Library Foundation, and how that's a kind of a new thing, and that might be something that other communities want to try with, if they have community foundations that want to be a part of that. And then the last thing is that the Outdoor Economics Conference is coming up shortly, and registration has opened for that. This is the second year that the Outdoor Economics Conference will be held. This is the first year it's going to be held in Silver City. It'll involve several speakers and workshops, as well as several field trips that will be part of a registration. If you're interested, the website is www.outdooreconomicsnm.com, and you can see what the agenda is going to be and registration and things like that. So if you're interested and you need further information, you can also contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ray?
No comment.
Councilwoman Smith?
I'm happy to have given all my time to Councilor Connell.
Councilor Beliston?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to congratulate Councilor Connell. I was sorry that I couldn't attend very much of it. I wasn't feeling well that day, but I got to go for a little bit, and I got to see a little bit of the dodgeball, which was, I think that one of the departments was trying to win the second round, and just found out that the same department won both of them. But, and I hope that both departments practice and get ready for next year. The last thing that I wanted to mention is for anyone who called and left a message on my answer machine at my home, I'm just doing this because I don't know if you did, because that was sometime the week of the actual council meeting. It got fried in a lightning strike, so I'm going to just encourage anyone who wants to leave me a message to please use the one at the town. It actually turns it into an email so that I get it, and I do know that you've called. And that number at the town is 597-7031, and that's the message machine. So I'm sorry if I didn't return any phone calls, but I kind of lost most of the equipment that was attached to my home phone, so including the phone itself. So that's what happens during monsoon season. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes of the July 23rd, 2019 regular meeting. Do I hear a motion? Councilwoman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of the town of Silver City of July 23rd, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is public input. We had a number of people that signed up, so we'll go in the order that was that you signed up. First is Chris Overlock. Would you press the little button there on the microphone and speak directly in the microphone, and so we can hear you?
Hello. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to comment on the proposed B ordinance. And I appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into crafting this proposal. However, I am opposed to this ordinance. It represents another layer of bureaucracy that's not needed. And I believe that we should be encouraging beekeeping, and you might want to consider a plan to increase beekeepers and beehives. And I also want to say, I'm sensitive to people who are allergic to bee stings, wasp stings, whatever. And I hope that the police and fire and EMTs have the EpiPen or, epinephrine, whatever it is, to counteract, an allergic reaction or anaphylactic shock or whatever. So I think that would be a much simpler solution if somebody does have that issue. But if this ordinance must be approved, one thing I'm glad to see is there evidently are no fees for registering beehives. However, if you're going to post an advertisement, a billboard on your fence that, hey, there's a beehive here, that could possibly just encourage theft. And so in a way, it's counterproductive because you're not going to know where that beehive went to. Somebody's not going to tell you. And it does appear that some of the fees and fines are more punitive than they are for dogs and cats, for not registering dogs and cats. And I apologize if I'm getting some of this wrong, but it made me wonder, what is the town experience with registering dogs and cats and chickens? I mean, do you know how many there are in town? Do you know how many are unregistered? I mean, I think it would be pretty hard to know an exact number, and I don't quite understand why you think it would be easier for bees. And also, how many dog and cat bites have there been? What's been the history of that as far as, to cross-check the number of rabies vaccination with the number of animals that have been registered? And what statistics are there to indicate how many households have more than 2 cats or 2 dogs? I just talked to my neighbor back in Phoenix. She's got 4 cats. I told her, well, if you moved here, we'd have to throw you in the slammer. And I'm joking, of course, but another issue, I think, is, $25 may not be much to you or me, but for some people, it's a disincentive to register, or how much ever it costs, and that's why some people don't. And the other thing is, finally, under 6.1 definitions of the new ordinance, you say bite or bitten is redefined to include sting. Since I don't believe bees bite, I'm sorry, I'm being a little facetious.
Excuse me, Chris, you have about a minute left.
Okay, well, why don't you just say stung instead of redefining the whole thing? So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next was Ken Sexton.
Is this still on? Okay, good. There's a lot I could say, but I'm going to start with something kind of straight ahead. On the NOI that I'm looking at and holding at the very bottom, it says consideration of the final adoption of such proposed ordinance will not take place until at least 2 weeks subsequent to the date of this notice. I thought it was 2 months. So I don't think 2 weeks is enough time to address the concerns we have. One of the things I'm concerned about is some of the details about how an ordinance would be enforced, which we're not allowed to review because it's still under development, is the specifications on how a hive will be managed by the registered beekeeper. I know it's still under development, but I think it affects how the ordinance is enforced. And lastly, there was the issue of training. I think that also affects how the ordinance is enforced. We hope that training is suitable or professional, and that the police and animal officers, control officers, will know how to recognize behavior of the animals and how to respond to them reasonably and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next was Lisa Tressler.
How's that? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to read mine. I'm not afraid to speak. I'm just afraid I'll leave something important out. About a year ago in August, about this time, I believe, my daughter-in-law, Leah Dockery, was attacked by a swarm of bees on West Street when she was taking the dog to the dog park. Leah was bit more than 100 times on the head alone. Leah not only suffered from the pain of the stings and the mental anguish, but she had a hospital bill, an ambulance bill, and her prescription glasses were either lost or broken in the scuffle, and she had to replace them. Leah still has nightmares about the incident. Excuse me, I'm speaking for Leah because to this day she's not coping well with what happened. I firmly believe that if there are any beekeepers in a residential area, there definitely needs to be a sign informing us of it. Also, in this particular incident, I remember reading in the Daily Press that there were some of our police officers who were bit as well that responded to the call. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Baldwin.
Jim Baldwin, county resident. Thank you, councilman and employed officials of the city. I have the newspaper here dated June 1st, and town council stands by their recycling for aluminum and cardboard. To me, cardboard is self-explanatory. It has a surface perhaps quarter-inch thick with corrugations in it. There's no question about that. But there are other forms of material that are considered to be recyclable. Notably, this. Is this considered to be cardboard? It says on it, and I will quote, "Please recycle this carton." So the company that produces this, Coca-Cola, considers this to be recyclable. I would like a definition so that I can know, so that other people can know if things that are thin, such as this, that do not have the corrugations, are acceptable to the recycling program. Another point for recycling, we collect aluminum cans. I got 2 today off the streets. But I am not going to be spending my time and gasoline to go out to the city landfill. I would like to see the city institute a recycling collection place for aluminum cans. Right now, the recycle bin that was there by the car wash is gone. But it's hidden over here to the east of us and behind the Aldo Leopold. I don't know if that's usable or if it's simply a place to store it. But nonetheless, the city should have, if it's going to accept recycling materials, some place where the public can readily, easily access. At one time, and Mayor Ladner remembers this, down where the Valero station used to be downtown, across from HMS, there were recycling bins down there. Then they were taken out, and they were reestablished out here and then in the Bells Plaza. So that is recycling. This next is an observation that I had this past Thursday when I was at the Verizon store in Hibbets. There were 2 men, Anglo men, rolling up sleeping bags. They had spent the night right someplace in the area of Verizon and Hibbets, out in that place. I watched, and I brought this to the attention of one of the store salespeople, and the lady said, "Oh yeah, they go down to Walgreens and use the Walgreens toilet facilities." And I think the town should be aware of things that it's not poaching, but they are intruding on private property. Next, the county loosens begging laws and takes aim at smokers. Now, I don't know if the town is trying to be clean and green, but the town needs to...
Jim, excuse me. You have about a minute left, okay?
I'm sorry?
You have about a minute left. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. Clean and green. You should have included in this smokeless tobacco, plug tobacco, Copenhagen tobacco, and things like that, because those are just as, to me, as raw and tainted as the fumes from cigarettes. Mr. Ray's comments about Boston Hill smoking were quite correct insofar as the fumes will diffuse, spread out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Al Gamboa?
Mayor Ladner, members of the council, and members of the city staff, thank you for this opportunity. And definitely kudos to the town. Councilor Kano's National Night Out participation, a week ago, I guess, on Saturday. It was fantastic to see the police department take on the fire department. We won't say who won there, we won't mention the chief, but it was excellent turnout. And it is nice to see the town participating in such an excellent program. Also, the main purpose of my coming up here and making an announcement does concern a festival, kind of an impromptu situation that an idea was born to bring on a festival to bookend with a blues festival back at the beginning of the summer. And it came together, kind of a late start, and it was hit and go, and no, let's do it, and let's not do it. We finally went full boat, it came together. The name of this festival, which, by the way, the city manager was approached on it. He was full boat, full partnership on it. Excellent opportunity to put something together for the town, and it came together known as Carnitas, Música y Más, which will include musical entertainment from many local bands. It will consist of country and western, rock and roll, mariachi, variety, and almost all these bands have some sort of connection to the local area, which is part of what kept the cost down. Normally, a large festival like this, as we know, is a very hefty budget. Thankfully, it came down to a fairly manageable budget, and we've approached several businesses for help on that, and it's all still in the works, but we decided we're going to make it happen, and it is a full go. Part of what helped us to motivate on that factor is we were watching a PBS program not too long ago, a few days ago, on how the Woodstock Festival, it was a matter of 3 or 4 days, and they finally got to it, made it happen, went down in history. Ideally, we plan to make this an annual affair, so with next year's festival, we'll definitely have a lot more opportunity to work these logistics. The next will be a purpose letter on this. Excuse me. Our goal is to put on a Labor Day weekend event consisting of musical entertainment that will include Spanish, mariachi, country, and rock and roll. Car show and competitive events are also planned. So this is going to be an enclosed venue similar to what the Wine Festival had, and there will be a cost associated with it to help with the expenses. It'll be $5 on a daily basis, $10 for the weekend. The committee came together with the express purpose of having a great end of summer musical event to coincide with the Blues Festival's kickoff summer activities. The town of Silver City immediately became a proactive partner in its willingness to provide a venue and infrastructure. The event is scheduled to happen on Labor Day weekend, Friday, August 30th. It'll kick off at 4:30 with a presentation of the colors by the Vietnam Veterans Association and a helicopter doing the national anthem. And it'll run through Saturday afternoon through the night. We'll have Bucky Allred on Saturday night, so he should draw in a good crowd. Gila River Band, David, his last name is skipping right now, and it'll run on through to September 1st. And we've got definitely a very good lineup of mariachi. The activities will be conducted at Golf Park, Silver City, New Mexico. The idea is to make this an annual event. If all goes well, we do plan a small interest fee, which will have to offset expenses. With the success of this event, beneficiaries will include veterans organizations, local veterans organizations, and the Silver City Museum Society. The committee consists of Patsy Ibarra, Francis Hawkins, Fred Baca, Alfred O'Gara.
Excuse me, you have about a minute
Sounds
left.
good. I'll be done. Leo and Leona Ogas, Mario Quintana, Raul Turrieta, Ken Pierce, El Gamboa, Barney Jaramillo, Juanita Escobedo, and Jose Reyes. Is there any questions I might be able to entertain from the staff or council?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is agenda item 8, 8 reports. First staff report will be by Deputy Chief of Fire Prevention, Kyle Marshall, who will give a report on fire code requirements for short-term rental units.
Thank you, Mayor, Town Council. So since we have implemented the new short-term rental ordinance, we've had 15 come forward and get business license. 2 of those have sparked a fire inspection. And the reason being is that most short-term rentals fall under the International Residential Code and not the International Fire Code. Okay? So the criteria that bumps them into the fire code requirements are an occupancy load of 10 or more or 5 sleeping rooms. Okay? There are still many short-term rentals that have yet to comply with the new ordinance, and as they apply for the business license, necessary codes will take effect. Okay? Anybody have any questions on?
Any questions? Councilman Smith?
Thank you. Question, quick clarification. So these are short-term rentals like Airbnb, VRBO, and you're saying that if they have an occupancy of 10 people or 5 bedrooms, sleeping rooms that they want to offer for short-term rental, that moves them into a different inspection category versus just like a home-based business. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Pretty much. So,
Well,
if they don't have an occupancy of 10 or more, or if they don't have 5 rooms, we don't inspect them at all.
At all.
So, these are the only ones that we are out there seeing. So we will see them manually, that's a good thing, but, there's not much we can do about the other ones unless we have a residential code. So.
Any other questions or comments? So if it's a commercial, then it would have to have like a sprinkler system, right?
So, yes, it just depends. We have one that was, before it was considered an R3 because it was a convent. Okay, now they're moving into a lodging home, so it's staying the same occupancy. So that one's not going to have to come up to code because it's not changing occupancies. Now, let's say we have a residential home, a big house, that had an occupancy load of more than 10 or 5. Whenever they come into the R3 category, which is residential 3 in the International Fire Code, now they're going to be required to have both smoke detectors, smoke alarms, and also a sprinkler system.
But it seems like, if it's the minimal requirements, it just seems like they should have at least fire extinguishers or something that would provide some protection for the residents. I'm not asking you if we can do that, but I'm just saying it seems like there ought to be some protection for the people who are staying there.
So one thing I would highly recommend, whether it be, single-family dwelling or anything, is having smoke detectors. Those do save lives. A couple of days ago, we had a fire in a daycare where they lost 5 children. So those kind of deaths can be prevented with, smoke alarms and that kind of thing.
Councilor Benson?
Excuse me for trying to clarify a little further. So, the International Residential Code applies if they're under the 5 and under 10 people.
That is correct, but we do not have a residential code here in Silver City. We have not adopted that.
So okay, so that clarifies it further, that we haven't adopted the International Residential Code.
So if we adopt a residential code, any new construction as per the residential code will be required to have home sprinkler systems.
And I remember, I think, the chief talking about that when we adopted the new International Fire Code. And I can tell you that, as far as I understand, that sites like Airbnb and things like that do ask the owner of the Airbnb or the VRBO if they have a smoke detector, if they have this, if they have a carbon monoxide detector, and they will state in there whether or not the owner has stated that such a thing is in there. And if it's not, they actually tell, if you're considering this property, please bring a portable one with you. And the reason I know that is because I was trying to get lodging in Cloudcroft, and I actually wouldn't, none of them had carbon monoxide detectors, and I thought, I have to go get a portable one? So I decided to, instead, I did find lodging, but I'm just saying that it is in those codes. They do require that the owner of the establishment that's trying to do the short-term rental does indicate that they have these, even though we may not have adopted the International Residential Code. It doesn't really say anything about sprinklers, but it will say whether the detectors are in the home or room.
So, on that, one thing that we have found is with our codes, we're just keeping people honest whenever they say they have these. Okay, we're going in and we're making sure. So they may require it, but someone from Airbnb doesn't actually go in there and inspect them. So they're just, basing on that person's word. One thing that we would like to get out is occupancy load is not what you state you're going to put in that building, okay? Occupancy load is based on square footage and the amount of allowable space per person. Okay, so we have found one that came in and they said, oh, we're going to fall under this because our application process is you fill out an application, you check a box that says that you're 10 or less or you're 5 or less rooms, and then you don't spark the fire inspection. Well, I saw one that was questionable, so I went and did the inspection, and what happened was on Airbnb it shows they have an occupancy of 9, but the husband and the wife live there. So then your occupancy is now 11. Now you fall over. But whenever we went and did the inspection, we did the measurement and all that, their occupancy is now a 9. So that's with them living there. So.
Okay.
That's one thing to keep in mind whenever we talk about these.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next is a lodger's tax report by Mr. Brown.
The mayor asked me to do a short report on the status of the lodger's tax. Last fiscal year, we ended up with $362,000. Over the last couple years, we've been increasing about 15% each year. I did provide you a report of where we're at to date after the first month of the fiscal year. We're 23% above last year. So we're doing really well. We brought in $38,000, and all of these numbers are prior to anything coming in from the Airbnbs so far. This is just the current establishments as we've been working with. And something a little bit interesting, I put this report together yesterday, and then I went downstairs and Anita was cleaning up the closet in her office, and she brought out a presentation from the budget of 1988, and one of them was lodger's tax, and it had the lodger's tax numbers for the last 88, 87, and 86, and for 85, they brought in $35,000 the entire year. 86, they brought in $36,000, and 88, they brought in $38,000. So we did that in 1 month. So, of course, inflation and everything. It was a little bit interesting. And also with that, we have every year with the new marketing firm, we are putting together a marketing plan for the following fiscal year. I provide you a copy of it, and so we'll be doing this a couple months before the end of each fiscal year, so we're ready for the following fiscal year. Do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, any other reports?
No.
Okay. Next is item 10, unfinished business. First item under unfinished business, item A, is the approval/disapproval of superseding notice of intent number 1272 in ordinance amending Chapter 6, Animals, Section 6-1, Definitions, adding a new Section 6-15, Keeping of Honeybees, and a new Section 32-7, permitting undesirable bee behavior of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Silver City. Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask my council members and staff and members of the public to bear with me as I give a little bit of a history here, because this has been a year in the making. So I want you to cast your mind back to August 5th, 2018, where, according to the Silver City Police Blotter, a man called Central Dispatch to report an attack by a mass of bees in the morning. Then a second person called Central Dispatch to report people yelling for help on West and 13th Streets. The Silver City firefighter who responded to this said that the department received calls about several people who were attacked by bees. One woman was stung multiple times and required medical attention. She was stung pretty badly. She was transported to Gila Regional Medical Center with well over 100 bee stings. Other passers-by and emergency responders also suffered multiple stings. That bee attack came from an urban hobbyist beekeeper's hive located across the street from the dog park. That event happened just a little over a year ago. In September 2018, I introduced the first version of NOI 1272, which would have banned hobby beekeeping within the town limits. As anticipated, that version of the NOI elicited plenty of comments from residents of Grant County. I want to assure everyone I listened to all those concerns, and I agreed that I would do diligent research, which I did, to bring back a superseded NOI. The research I did was extensive. I conferred with the state apiarist from New Mexico State University, Mr. Ryan Piles. I read a number of publications related to urban beekeeping and public safety. I analyzed over a dozen ordinances from local governments throughout the USA, including those from Minnesota, North Dakota, Virginia, West Virginia, Texas, California, both Madison and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and New Mexico. All of those ordinances regulated hobby beekeeping. I talked informally with beekeepers to gather their information. So at the October 9th, 2018 Town Council, I brought back a superseded NOI. And I've always said that the purpose and intent of ordinances concerning hobby beekeeping was to provide for safe and orderly keeping of honeybees in the town in order to protect the safety, welfare, and quality of life of the citizens of the town of Silver City. Well, that superseded NOI from October 2018 drew from the publications I had reviewed, from the conversations with beekeeping experts, and from the information included in other local government ordinances. That was a very detailed NOI. It called for registration, a permit, inspection. It required beekeepers to keep records and to allow inspection of those records. In the ordinance, the permitting and inspection process requirements were directly parallel to the ordinance requiring permits for urban chicken keeping. That October NOI had a series of requirements drawn both from publications about safe management of beekeeping and from those government ordinances from other municipalities and counties. So, for example, it limited the number of urban hives according to the size of the town lot. It required only use of gentle European honeybees to make up the colonies, discouraging Africanization. It required regular inspection and requeening with impregnated queens if there was any aggressive behavior. It prohibited having urban hives close to schools, preschools, playgrounds, parks, hospitals. It required flyway or fencing to get the bees flying up and out of the direct pathway of people. It required access to water. All of those components are present in many, many, many other local ordinances. However, the pushback from beekeepers was intense. I continued to listen, to question, and I searched even further. I read many documents put out by New Mexico and other state extension services, and I managed to talk lots and lots with the state apiarist and with the state entomologist. Both of them were very, very helpful. A small set of local beekeepers were willing to talk with me graciously as long as we talked one-on-one in private, and I really appreciate their willingness to discuss such issues reasonably. Other people in public were openly hostile and insulted me on the street. I continued, conversations with everyone who seemed like they might have an interest in this topic. In May 2019, I brought back the third, much more limited, superseded NOI to the town council. That May version eliminated almost all the points the local beekeeping group had found objectionable. The NOI still required an urban beekeeper to register with the town and to post a copy of that registration where the public could see it, stating that there were hives nearby. Every expert with whom I have spoken, as well as reference documents on how to keep urban honeybees held by hobby beekeepers safe, have those requirements. The third point of contention, or perhaps fear from that very simple NOI, expressed from local beekeepers, was a reference to the penalties. The penalty in that NOI stated that the provisions of Section 1.9 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Silver City would apply for citations of noncompliance. That general penalty provision has up to $500 in accumulated penalties for any citation, as well as possible jail time. Upon reflection, it did seem to me that penalty could be excessive. I want to acknowledge that over the past year, Dr. Ken Sexton has had the unenviable task of collaborating a lot with me and then trying to communicate with various beekeepers in New Mexico and Grant County. I want to say that many or most of the concerns that the Grant County beekeepers have articulated are not actually necessarily legislative, but are rather procedural. For example, the beekeepers expressed concern about training of emergency response personnel, and Dr. Sexton sent me a good document with information that could possibly be incorporated into training with emergency responders. That is up, of course, to the fire chief and the police chief, but they each have that document under review to consider how they would incorporate such training in their staff. The beekeepers also wanted to have a list of what would be considered beekeeping best practices in the interest of public safety, and they originally offered to create that list. They then refused to do that. So with Dr. Sexton's affirmative review, I've drafted a set of simple handout points that the town manager might or might not choose to include in the registration packet, because that is an operational process that would be best left up to him. But I do want to say that the simple points that he could have an opportunity to include if he chose would be putting some sort of suggested limit on the number of hives per town-sized lot, suggesting keeping the placement away from the direct sidewalk and faced away from neighbors' property, and perhaps not right across the street from a preschool, making sure that there is adequate water, and inspecting the bees regularly, and any sign of aggression, requeening or doing something with that hive. I cannot tell you how many YouTube videos I have watched titled Mean Bees and What to Do About Them, and all of them express a lot of information about what you look for if you're going to have aggressive bees. So in summary, here we are in August 2019 with yet one more superseded NOI 1272. That means that there will be, if the town council approves this, it will be out for public discussion and review. I do want to point out that there are only two substantive changes compared to the one from May. One is adding more specific language about what aggressive and undesirable bee behavior would be. To develop this, I drew extensively from researchers at Oregon State University who have developed and published guidelines for best practices for keeping bee nuisances low. In general, an activity is a nuisance when a person's use of or activity on a property infringes on the rights of another person, either their property or on them, or on the rights of the public. So this infringement might be anything that could be considered harmful to public health, safety, or convenience, or might impede the ability of people to enjoy their property or a public property like a park, or lowers the physical condition or value of property. One would hope that hobby beekeepers here in the town of Silver City want to keep their hobby from developing into a nuisance for their neighbors and the general public. The other real substantive change in this NOI compared to May is the express penalty. The penalty statement including in this NOI is very mild, up to a total of $200 fine for unremediated citations, and no mention of any jail time. This NOI does require registration with the town were it to become an ordinance. Any such registration would be under the control and direction of the town manager. This is really important. For one, such a database would allow the town staff and emergency responders to know that there's a potential added danger of bees if they respond to a call at that address. And yes, this NOI, should it become an ordinance, would require some public posting that a yard contains hobby beekeeping hives. So remember, there is a population where 5% of the people are allergic. Over half of them so allergic that a bee sting can threaten their lives. It seems reasonable to tell your neighbors that there might be urban hobby beekeeping hives in the backyard, so that the neighbor, if they are allergic, can choose not to walk right next to the yard. I had a call 2 weeks ago from a citizen who wondered how she might find out if someone in her neighborhood had moved in some hives, because she was seeing a huge increase in bees mobbing her hummingbird feeder. She walked around the neighborhood and she saw no signs. Well, I told her that there was not yet an ordinance requiring any signs. But public notice is an important component of public safety and awareness. Now, I do want to ask the chief to come and talk here, because some beekeepers have expressed concern that if they have a posting of something, which I imagine would be an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper on a fence or where reasonably the public could see it, that it would invite thieves of their bee colonies and equipment. So, Chief, you have been doing research on this. Do you mind telling us what you and your staff have found?
Mayor and Council, I've done some research. Also, Officer Howard has done some research. Captain Vegas from the Patrol Division, I originally assigned to him to do some research. We haven't found any data to show anything leading to any thefts or vandalism. There's no data out there. So just so you guys know, I wasn't able to come across anything. None of us were able to.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So let me just check something with you, because I know that there have been reports of commercial beehives being taken because of the profitability of a commercial entity. But correct me if I'm incorrect, but the statements that I read in all of the reports were that the people who steal beehives are other beekeepers.
That's what I read.
So it's not posting a sign that says there is a hobby hive that puts an entity necessarily in any danger.
There's no facts or data that leads me to believe that.
There's no evidence based on that. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And the work of all your folks combing various publications and calling up other municipalities. Thank you. So really, to reiterate here, this NOI would really have only two major requirements for beekeepers. Urban hobby beekeepers within the town limits of Silver City, we're not talking Grant County, we're just saying the town of Silver City, would register with the town, and then they must post a copy of some sort of registration notice in a place that is reasonably visible to the public. There is nothing in this ordinance that places any undue burden on those hobbyists. Indeed, this is the most mild-mannered ordinance I have seen yet in my year of research. It does, however, offer some public health and safety improvement over what we have now, which is right now we do not know where there are beehives in the town of Silver City, and no one with a severe allergy has any way to stay clear of a property that there might be bees circulating and defending their hive. I do want to publicly thank Ryan Hiles of the State Extension Service, our state apiarist, Dr. Carol Sutherland, state entomologist, and Dr. Ken Sexton of the Grant County Beekeepers for their extensive discussions and work with me.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Councilman Smith? It's been a year-long process.
Yes, sir, it has.
And I just want to express appreciation to Councilman Smith and appreciation to Ken Sexton and Susan and the beekeepers for working together to try to come up with an ordinance that will protect citizens, but at the same time demonstrate that the city is doing its due diligence and providing for the health, safety, and welfare of our community. I too have learned a lot about bees. On my own, I took a trip to Tucson and visited with some of the leading researchers at the Bee Institute in Tucson, who study bee behavior, honeybee behavior, and I've talked to some of the other mayors around New Mexico, and I really believe we do need an ordinance, and I do believe that Councilman Smith has really gone the extra mile to try and work with the beekeepers to come up with an ordinance that will do what I just said, protect our citizens and also provide our law enforcement and the fire department information on where the bees are located. That's really important too. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I make a motion, please? I move to approve superseding notice of intent ordinance number 1272, and ordinance amending Chapter 6, Animals, Section 6.1, Definitions, adding a new Section 6-15, Keeping of Honeybees, and a new Section 32-7, Permitting Undesirable Bee Behavior of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Silver City.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Bedison?
I second the motion as stated.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion from the council? Councilor Ray, I'm sorry. All in favor?
No, it's a... Yeah, it is, we can, okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
We have a tie vote, and I vote yes to move this forward.
Thank you.
Motion carries. The next item on the unfinished business is the approval/disapproval of ordinance number 1283, an ordinance amending Chapter 40, Solid Waste and Recyclable Materials, Section 40-47, B-2C of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Silver City. Mr. Brown?
Mayor and Council, as you remember, at the last council meeting, we approved a contract to farm out our solid waste collection. But as we were going through that process, we realized that the ordinance itself contains the requirement that there be a 30-day termination clause in any contracts when we farm out contract out the services. Working with entities that we've worked with and we've awarded the contract to, we've realized that 30 days is way too short of a time frame for a transition from one program to another. For instance, if we had to take the services back and provide them ourselves after September, it would take us a lot longer than 30 days to get new equipment in, just by itself, not just getting it started up. So this amendment to the ordinance would just eliminate that requirement of 30 days.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Brown? Do I hear a motion? Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve of ordinance number 1283, an ordinance amending Chapter 40, Solid Waste and Recyclable Materials, Section 40-47B-2C of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Silver City.
Do you have a second? Councilor Bedison?
Thank you, Mayor. I second the motion as stated.
Motion and second. Roll call, please, Ann.
Counselor Madison?
Aye.
Counselor Ava Smith? Aye. Counselor Ray?
Aye.
Counselor Connor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move for a short break.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Calling our meeting back to order. Our next item on the agenda is 11A. Under new business, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-33, a resolution adopting the Town of Silver City Museum Strategic Plan. Mr. Brown and Mr. Rosali, how do you want to handle it? Okay. Mr. Rosali is the interim museum director.
Mic on. There we go. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members and Town Manager Alex Brown, especially for all your support. As interim director, I'm real excited about the possibilities of this museum, and I'm really honored to have been entrusted with the reins during this transition period. I'm really excited because I'm relatively new to Silver City, but every day I see another reason to kind of fall in love with this place. There's so many interesting people, there's a great history. And right now, the museum has in place a very dedicated and talented staff who are here with us tonight. And there's a ton of optimism and opportunity for making this community even better. So I'm here this evening to ask your help in moving this museum back into the upper echelons of professional excellence. Museums, like hospitals and schools, are accredited, and our accrediting body is based in Washington, D.C., the American Alliance of Museums. It's an alliance of over 5,000 museums, and they set the standards. Just like building codes and fire codes, they help us improve our operations. We were last accredited 15 years ago. There's been a couple of extensions, but we had a deadline of finishing our accreditation work by August 30th. This is the last step in the process. It's been a very quick process, since 6 months, basically. And this step and the next step, which is a visit by reviewers, 2 reviewers who will come and check out the museum and interview staff and some of you about how we're doing. But let me just give you a tiny bit of perspective. The real value in getting accredited is you kick the tires. You figure out how you're doing things measured against standards of excellence. It also gives us prestige nationally. Only 22% of museums in the entire country, only 22% are accredited. And if you look at all the municipal museums in the country, only 6% of municipal museums are accredited. So we were in a rare group. So the prestige, but it also, if you go for national grants like the Eddie H. or IMLS or the McCune or some of the larger foundations, they will ask you, are you accredited by AAM? So according to AAM's rules, because we are a municipal museum, we need your approval, your stamp of approval on our plan. So you have a full copy of the plan, and I've also included a 2-page executive summary. But let me just tell you a little bit about how we developed the plan, and then if there are any questions. So one of the most important things in developing our plan was making sure we had wide community input. And there's a list of almost 80 different stakeholders, members of our community from every walk of life and from every community here, who helped us develop that plan. Our first meeting, our first public meeting, had more than 40 people, 40 community members helping us, giving us ideas. The other thing is that every museum staff person was involved in developing this plan. We knew what the professional standards were among museums, and we tried to reach for them.
But really, we could not have gotten this plan done so quickly and so well if it wasn't for the able guidance and facilitation that was provided by the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments, and specifically Priscilla Lucero and Emily Goykovich. We couldn't have done it without their guidance. So quickly, some of the high points of the plan. The museum wants to be more accessible. We want our information, our objects, our collections to be out there in the public so everybody knows what we have. We also need to be more inclusive and more representative of the diversity of our community. So we are continually looking for people to come to us, and if they're not coming to us, we're going to reach out and invite them to come and be part of their museum. We also want to serve more people. We get about 17,000 people come to the museum every year. We want to double that number in a few years. We need more people to take advantage of this great gym. And we also want to be better caretakers of the collections we have and the historic house. I guess now I'll just read the 30-page document. Oh, no, just kidding. I can review the executive summary if you like, or I can simply go right to questions.
Give us a summary.
Okay, you have a 2-page document. On one side, we laid out the big issues we wanted to address. We wanted to get accreditation, so we wanted to strive to meet the highest professional standards. We have a staff that has worked in some pretty large museums and have some great experience. We know we can do it. We want to make our collections management systems better and make our collections accessible. There's been a series of ways in which we've numbered and cared for our collections over the years, and they don't all match. So our collections people are doing a lot of forensic curatorial work. We also need to develop our collections. Collections are often very, they're not often directed and organized and framed. So we know there's big gaps in the objects that we have in our collection and what parts of the community they don't represent. So we want to make our collection more representative of this community. We also want to be clear about what our messages in our programming are. We need to take care of the house. It's a historic house, and there are some certain requirements, and there are certain parts and character of that house that we need to preserve while we're using it as a museum. We need to know more about our audiences. Right now, somebody comes to the museum and we take their zip code and we take the number of adults or the number of kids in their group, but we don't ask them a lot of questions about why they came to this museum or whether they were happy with their visit. Most of them are, we know anecdotally. But we want to know what kind of exhibits they'd like to see or what sort of collections we should have. So we need to know more about what motivates people to come to the museum. We have to increase our revenue and support. We have a great partner in the Silver City Museum Society. They contribute close to $150,000 a year to help us operate the museum. We want to push that number up higher. And we need to pay attention to our staff. We need to make sure our staff are comfortable, happy, motivated, continuously learning and growing as a staff. So those are the big issues. And on the second page, on the reverse, are a set of 15 goals that we laid out for ourselves over the next 5 years. And within each goal, in the detail of the plan, you'll see a series of strategies or ways in which we want to reach those goals. Am I getting close to time? Whatever. So quickly, those goals are laid out. We want to make our object collection information easily accessible to the public. And in these days of computers and online access, someday, 5 or more years from now, you'll be able to, from your home, click on the Silver City Museum website and type in saddles, whatever you're interested in, and up will pop all the saddles in our collection and what we know about them. So making this great resource accessible to everybody easily. We want to do the same with our archival collections. Those are documents. We also want to make that our photograph collection. We have close to 25,000 historic photographs from Silver City and Grant County. As I said earlier, we want to make our collection more comprehensive. There's pieces of our community that are not represented well in our collections yet. We want to get out ahead of our exhibition planning. There's been a little stumble the last couple of years at the museum. We're getting through that. But we want to be able to say, here are the next 5 exhibits we're going to be doing over the next 5 or so years, so that the community can rally around and be part of developing those exhibits, and you guys know what we're up to. We want to do the same with our education plan. There aren't enough Silver City school kids who take advantage of this museum yet, so we want to reach out and do more there. As I said, we want to bump our attendance numbers up. We want to create what we call in the field a visitor studies program. We want to interview people who are coming to the museum and those that are not. And actually, we're just about to kick off a project with the help of SkyWest Media to help us develop a visitor studies program, asking people why they're coming to the museum. We want to improve our visibility to tourists and the local community. More people need to know about the museum than they do right now. We need a facility management plan. How are we taking care of this historic house? We want to support the Museum Society's fundraising efforts. We have a really great volunteer program. We want to make it even greater, and we would like to encourage more people to volunteer at the museum. And lastly, paying attention to staff needs and making sure staff are comfortable and satisfied and forever learning and growing. So that's our plan in a nutshell.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Bedison?
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to and I hope that you'll introduce your museum staff, but I thank all of the volunteers that were part of this, developing the strategic plan, everyone that put information into it, and to your staff. I am really impressed with what you've done in 6 short months, because I know that this is a long process. And I'm impressed with the goals that you've come up with, because they do certainly meet the best practices of museums. And so I just want to say kudos to the work that you all have done, and to your staff. If you could have them come up and introduce them to everyone, because I think that this is a great staff. They're really come together under your leadership, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was definitely a group effort, and bring staff up now. Okay, there we go. Leading the effort in our gift shop is Melody Collins, who at 2 years, or a year and a half I've been there, she's beaten our revenue budgets every year. She's
Come on up.
Come on up, yeah.
Everybody, come on up.
Oh, come on, as a group.
And then you can introduce them, Bart, if you would.
Sure. I was mentioning how many different kinds of collections management systems have been invented and reinvented over the years, and this is the saint and detective and hard worker collections manager, Ashley Smith, who's going to make sense out of all of that. And the guy with all the great ideas about exhibits, and who helps out in every other way possible, the son of ranchers himself, Joe Bryce, our curator. And I don't know what Amanda does, or I don't know what Amanda doesn't do. She pretty much runs the museum. Amanda Gomez is our office manager. Does all kinds of things. This week, she was trying to get roofers to come and repair holes in the roof. She does it all. And in an interim position, we have Aaron Griffith, who is our educator, and coming up with some really cool ideas for new education programs. Missing tonight is Joe Lutz, who's our volunteer coordinator, but it's a fantastic group to work with. They got a ton of ideas, and they let me know too.
Mayor and Council, I really want to commend all these employees for the job that they've done. They're all relatively, who's the longest serving employee? Nobody's been around for a little bit. But 3 years, and then Amanda's 2, and everybody else is less than 2. So everybody's really new. And to come together and be able to get get this project done in the amount of time that they've been able to do it, as well as continue to operate the museum in the fashion that they've been able to do it, we've got to all really commend them for the job well done.
Priscilla, could you and your staff come up too?
Because I'd love that we would give everybody a round of applause. We haven't done the business yet, but I think that business will go forward in terms of accepting this. So I just want to thank everyone, and I think that all of us should. Incredible to come together and do this in 6 months. It is with a new staff. Kudos to all of you.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Mayor, unless there are other questions, I move to approve resolution number 2019-33, a resolution adopting the Town of Silver City Museum Strategic Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion from the council?
Yes.
Councilor Kano?
I just also wanted to thank Mr. Gamboa, because I know it's been a rough ride in the Museum Society, and it's good to see you all working together.
Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Benson.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson. Aye. Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Kano.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, both.
Thank you all. Thank you.
The next item is 11B, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-25, a resolution of the Town of Silver City ratifying a certain agreement between the Town of Silver City and the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments dated August 13, 2019, and authorizing the execution of same by the proper official of the Town of Silver City. Alex?
Mayor Council, this is the annual agreement that is required by the state to be part of the Council of Government program. As you just saw, what we just went through is an example of the types of services that the Council of Governments provides us all the time. They're so important to the town services that we provide them an office in one of our buildings so we can keep them close. Because I don't want them going to Deming. And so, with that, we also have to make appointments to the Council of Governments Board, which I believe is myself, Councilor Bettison. You're my alternate? Oh, Peter's my alternate. And then you're alternate number two. So, with that, they're an invaluable resource that provide us services on a wide range of programs, initiatives, whatever it might be. And they are very, very important to the operation of the Town of Silver City. With that, I would recommend that we approve the...
Any questions or comments? Councilor Hudson?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Alex, for explaining that. One of the things that we usually say every year is that we get an incredible amount of resources and assistance from the Council of Governments for a very small fee. The fee doesn't represent in some ways, all the work that they do for us. And it just, as you said, I mean, they helped with the museum strategic plan, they helped all, municipalities with their infrastructure, going to the, going up and, getting our money back from the state, doing all sorts of grants, doing all those sorts of things. They are really, they're just critical to our well-being as a municipality. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that the amount of money that we pay for all these services for the next fiscal year is $6,189, and that really is a small amount for what we get. And I just need to say thank you to Priscilla and also to Emily and to all the staff for all the hours of work that you put in for us and every other municipality and government that you help with. So thank you. And
any other comments or questions from the council?
Quick comment.
Councilwoman Smith.
I just have a quick comment, which is some of the most glorious memories I have of being in Santa Fe are seeing Priscilla Lucero stand up and tell people what to do.
give us money.
Councilor Medicine is the sponsor of this resolution. So.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. With that, I move to approve a resolution number 2019-25, a resolution of the Town of Silver City ratifying a certain agreement between the Town of Silver City and the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments dated August 13th, 2019, and authorizing the execution of the same by the proper official of the Town of Silver City, and naming or designating Alex C. Brown, Town Manager, to be the member of the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments, and Peter Pena as alternate number 1, and Cynthia Ann Bedison as alternate number 2.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Amos Smith.
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion as stated.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please, then.
Councilor Medicine?
Aye.
Councilor Amos Smith? Aye. Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilor Kano?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The next item is 11C, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-30, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the NM Finance Authority for a sports complex project loan. Mr. Brown?
Mayor and Council, as you know, we received $250,000 from our senators and our senator and representatives for the construction of the concession stand and bathrooms down at Scott Park. When we put the project out to bid, I believe about 3 or 4 years ago, it came in around $440,000. So the allocation is not enough to complete construction. So with this resolution, we're looking to acquire the remaining funds necessary to complete the construction, as well as we have one field that did shift a few years ago. We did use some money that was previously appropriated to the concession stand. We had it reallocated to fix at least the infield of that field, so that way we could get some use out of it. So the remaining balance of this loan is Part 1 is to do the construction of the bathroom and concession stand. Part 2 is to finish the reconstruction of that one baseball field. So we're looking at about $600,000 at 2% interest for a period of 7 years. So and we're dedicating the third increment of municipal gross receipts tax. And the payment right now is it's not finalized, but it's around $110,000 a year for the next 7 years. Any questions?
Councilor Medicine?
Just a quick question. I understood that in I don't know when that, I thought it started July 1, that we don't have to dedicate a particular part of the GRT because they've all been combined into one
Right now, they're requiring us to dedicate a source.
Okay.
So they're still requiring that we do choose an increment because they need to show they need to do a financial analysis. Okay, and so what they do is for instance, they're going to take the third increment of the municipal gross receipts taxes, see how much revenue is generated by that tax, and then see what the coverage is for this loan. We generated about $800,000 for each 0.25% that has been imposed, and it's just more of a description now than what it was. Now we can use that law that passed, that we deallocated. For instance, we have a 1/16th increment of environmental gross receipts taxes that is dedicated to the sanitation fund. We don't have to, and according to the previous legislation, you could only use it for sanitation services or wastewater services. And we of course, we use sanitation, but now we don't have those same requirements anymore. So we can use any of the increments for any town operations.
I was just trying to clarify, and then I think in the past, we had to do an ordinance that specifically dedicated that particular increment.
We're still going to have to do
Okay,
that.
and I wanted to check that, because it sounds like that would be the next step,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Ray?
Mr. Brown, this here is going to be used hopefully for Scott Park.
Yes, it's for Scott Park for the concession stand and bathrooms, and then that one field that's fenced off on the outfield, we'll be able to finish the outfield, so that way the entire field can be used.
Okay, which one is going to be a priority, if I may ask?
The concession stand and bathrooms.
Okay. Thank you.
Because we have legislative funding for that, so we need to use that first.
Any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Kano?
I move to approve of resolution number 2019-30, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority for a sports complex project loan.
Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second the debate.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Kano.
Aye.
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Amos Smith. Aye. Councilor Bettis.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 11D, the approval/disapproval of Resolution 2019-31, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the NM Finance Authority for a fire equipment project loan. Mr. Brown?
Mayor and Council, again, this is another loan, but because we're applying for the funding under different loan programs, we have to have different resolutions. That's why we didn't just do one resolution for both loans. This is a loan for fire equipment, to purchase a fire truck, to replace one of the fire trucks that we currently have, as well as a brush truck. And that's about $650,000, again, at about 2% interest, six-year term on this loan. Fire protection funds will be used to secure the loan, as well as pay for the loan over the life of the loan.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I think Councilor Kano is sponsoring this motion.
Quick question, Mr.
Oh, Councilor Amos Smith?
Both of this visualize what a fire truck is. Can you tell us what a brush truck is?
I'll let the firefighters give a better description than myself.
I always ask the questions, but I think my neighbors are going to ask me.
Certainly. Mayor, council members, the purchase in this loan agreement is for two trucks. The first being a traditional fire apparatus, the traditional fire truck. The second is for a brush unit, which is a smaller, more maneuverable unit used to fight brush and grass fires. They have different capabilities, carry different amounts of water, have smaller pumps, and they're set on a smaller vehicle frame. Is that sufficient?
Yes, thank you very much. I can imagine that the good and wild interface that we have, that a smaller truck might be useful.
Very much so.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion? Councilor Kano?
I move to approve a resolution number 2019-31, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approvals to the New Mexico Finance Authority for a fire equipment project loan.
Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second that as read.
Motion and second. Any comments or discussion? Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Kano.
Aye.
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Raymond Smith. Aye. Councilor Madison.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The next item is 11F, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-32. A resolution authorizing the town manager to approve or disapprove private celebration permits authorizing the sale of certain alcoholic beverages at private events within the town. Councilor Ray, you're the sponsor of this one.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something new that's coming down from the state, and they have to change the laws. And with this resolution here, we're going to ask Mr. Brown to see if he would take care of it. That way, it would be a burden, would take away from so much time with us, and he would have a better understanding of the law than we would. And Mr. Brown or Mr. Scaven?
Mayor and Council, currently I believe the state law does not require that the town council, in state law, it requires that the town approve these permits. The current town ordinance states that the town council will approve them, and that's why we've been bringing all of these public celebration permits to you. And as you know, I believe that's a majority of a lot of the, we're just talking private, well, I'll just let Robert.
This is private.
There's something new called a private celebration permit. The council will continue to do public celebration permits. Private celebration permit would be at a private function, but you would like a license holder there to sell drinks rather than you providing drinks as part of your party. You bring in a licensee of the state to sell drinks at your private function. And unlike previous celebration permits, this one actually says that you can delegate a mayor, a town manager, whoever you want to, of the governing body, to handle these private celebration permits. If you look at the order of importance to the community, a private celebration permit is probably the one with the least impact. So you can delegate that to the town manager. He would have the authority then to grant or deny a private celebration permit.
And the celebration permit would go through the same process as a public celebration permit. It would be reviewed by all the department heads, and any of their recommendations that may pertain to the location or accommodations that might be necessary for that specific location, they're still going to have to sign off on it and give me their recommendations as well.
Councilor Madison?
So I have a question for Mr. Scavone. It doesn't say the sale, it says dispensing in this. So dispensing and sale are two different things. So what I'm saying is that means that there's a wedding that's at a private home, and the question is so there's a wedding at a private home, okay? And generally speaking, at a wedding, you don't pay for your drinks. Just generally speaking, it's the family or,
I think they're recognizing that some families would rather have somebody selling drinks at their
event rather than providing drinks.
But
Dispensing for money.
where does it say dispensing for money? That's what I don't understand, and that's why I'm trying to clarify this, because people are gonna ask, if they're doing a wedding and they have a provider there, everything in the resolution states dispensing, except for the title, it says authorizing the sale. I'm just trying to clarify what it is we're doing, because it does say, then the first whereas, it says sales by the drink, but then you go into saying dispensing of alcohol beverages, and I just want to make sure that whatever we do, that we understand what it is we're doing, so that we don't have people that are doing a wedding, or they're doing a private event at their business, and they're providing the alcohol, but they're not selling the alcohol. See what I'm saying? I'm just trying to figure this out, so we don't get a whole bunch of people that are confused.
Well, I'm looking at the correspondence back and forth between the town clerk and the alcohol and beverage, and they say it's the same thing as a public celebration, but it's a private celebration. So the same authorities that would go with a public celebration are going with the private celebration. The only difference being is the private celebration, you have access, you're controlling the access of who can show up.
Right.
But there's I have a copy of, I think I have a copy of the permit. They put out a flyer on it. Let's see what else we got.
I think it'd be at the discretion of the person having the...
Yeah, the question is, somebody's going to pay for the alcohol, whether it's the party giver or the attendees. So it's the authority to dispense for money, whether the money is paid for by the guests or by the person having the event.
Okay, so that answers the question that if you're doing something at a private business, whereas before you could do it if you had, you had invitees and you couldn't really, you wouldn't let anybody else in. You didn't really have to go through this, but now this would, underneath this resolution would be something that they would have to get this, they would have to sign, and they'd have to get permission from the designee, would be the town manager, to be able to do that one way or another.
Right. All these laws are regulating the license holder. Without these laws, the only place a license holder can use his license is on the four walls of his establishment.
Right.
So they've added laws to the original licensing where they said, okay, you can make your license portable. You can use it for this, you can use it for that, but the governing body has to approve. After we do our approval, the state says, now you've got to go to your local body and see if there's any issue, and usually it has to do with public safety, that the local body gives or denies approval. So they've expanded this list of places where the license can be portable, if that's a word. So it used to be it stopped at public celebration. Now they have private celebration. So if you want to you can now hire somebody from a licensed establishment to bring his license to your private party.
And cover that.
And so the license is still, now has been extended to private parties.
Okay.
And who pays for it is not, they don't talk about it.
Okay.
It's the portability of the license. And this one, unlike the others, this specifically says implicitly, we know this is a bother for town councils, so you can name anybody you want to dispense those kinds of licenses. And I suggested Alex.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ray?
I move to approve a resolution number 2019-32, a resolution authorizing the town manager to approve or disapprove private celebration permits, authorizing the sale of certain alcoholic beverages at private events within the town.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilor Kano?
I'll second that motion as stated.
Motion second. Any other discussion or comments from the council? Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Kano?
Aye.
Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith? Aye. Councilor Madison?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 11F, the approval/disapproval of notice of intent ordinance number 1284, an ordinance repealing Chapter 32, nuisances, Article 3, unattended vacant buildings, Section 32-50, Cetera sequence of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. Councilor Amy Smith, you're sponsoring this one?
Yes, sir, I am. So let me speak to this. So I'm going to say that I'm speaking to this as a 5-year volunteer with the Silver City Main Street Project's Economic Vitality Committee. So I want to start off by saying that we have a designated historic downtown with commercial buildings that are historic, some architecturally significant. These buildings contribute to our overall town and our main street's unique character, and the potential for our town to remain vibrant and growing. The challenge for potential property developers is that any non-maintained, visibly unoccupied commercial buildings, which might have a long and rich history, and which may have at some time been wonderful bakeries, or hotels, or department stores, or theaters, those buildings can be very costly to adapt, rehabilitate, and repurpose. But when such buildings stay visibly unoccupied and visibly deteriorating, their declining status can lead to blight, can discourage economic development, can diminish property values, and can act as fire hazards and magnets for crime. Some of the commercial property owners in our downtown do not maintain their buildings, and they use those buildings for storage, in the same way a person in the neighborhood might use a broken down car sitting in their backyard, or an RV for storage. This way of skirting use means such a building is really underutilized, in that it does not economically perform as a commercial structure that generates income for the business's property owner and generates gross receipts tax for the local government. Currently unoccupied and visibly deteriorating vacant commercial buildings in our Silver City historic downtown create a negative and unwelcome impression to visitors. And we face a dilemma as a community: how to motivate property owners, some of whom live out of state, some of whom are limited liability corporations operating clearly with a portfolio of property that really serves as tax write-offs. How do we as a community get them to maintain those spaces, lease those spaces for a reasonable, not inflated market value, or seek buyers to purchase the buildings? You know, it is true, some property owners may purposefully maintain that vacant status of their buildings by inflating the requested rent beyond what the market can support, because this allows them to personally report lost revenue and decrease their personal tax liabilities. That can be a scam, and it does go on. Properties that are unoccupied and unlooked at over time can easily become the victims of deferred maintenance, leading to problems with the building's roof, foundation, electrical systems, plumbing, and any kind of air vent systems. Under such conditions, buildings can become dilapidated and so costly to repair that really the owners just decide they're just not going to do anything with them. This further burdens us with the cost of trying to get those owners to do some remediation. This ordinance that I'm proposing we repeal was a faltering step, but it was a good step in intention to address commercial buildings downtown that have not been occupied or maintained adequately. However, the ordinance ended up to be really pretty much unenforceable in terms of actual data analysis, personnel, and costs to the town. This ordinance that we are speaking to repeal required vacant building owners within the historic downtown district to register the properties with the Community Development Department within a month and a half of it becoming vacant, to secure the buildings and to continually re-register that there was vacancy, and to maintain a fairly reasonable size liability insurance requirement. But it didn't have all the stuff that was needed. There wasn't any requirement for out-of-town owners to have any local agent to actually be looking at the building and to stay on top of the issues of the building. There were no kinds of standards for external maintenance or inspection, which would require owners to paint or landscape or weatherproof or repair obvious problems like broken windows with the buildings. And as one community development professional has told me again and again, we cannot regulate ugly, but with some good work, we might develop some visually enforceable maintenance requirements. And there was no provision designating any kind of a town entity to determine whether or not the building was in any way detrimental to property values or the characters of the historic downtown. So we know that buildings that are left just to fall apart affect the economic vitality of our town, but we didn't have an entity to measure that or report on that. And the fee schedule was really quite low, with only a $35 deposit required for the building initial inspection and a penalty of only $100 for failing to register vacant buildings or property. And it was supposedly the owner's responsibility to register the property and file status reports every 30 days without any real ability for the town to enforce. So you might guess how that has gone. Who was actually going to contact and find out who ran the limited liability corporation located in California or Texas or Florida to get all of that done, if he could find them at all? And via a court case, the town found out that unless such an ordinance, like the one that we are seeking to repeal, unless that whole ordinance was consistently enforced strictly on all situations and all occasions, no selective enforcement could be allowed. And to top it off, the state of New Mexico's property tax code does not allow us to assess those kinds of buildings to penalize property owners. Yikes. Time to start afresh. By rescinding this unenforceable ordinance, we can make way to work with New Mexico Main Street, with our town staff, with council members, with property owners who really want to have the downtown succeed, and with our state legislators, perhaps, for some of the common sense measures that would enable a good ordinance.
Any questions or comments for Councilor Lehman Smith? Do I hear a motion?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Lehman Smith.
Thank you, sir. I move to approve Notice of Intent, Ordinance Number 1284, an ordinance repealing Chapter 32, Nuisances, Article 3, Unattended Vacant Buildings, Sections 32-50 sequence of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, and I'll second that as read.
Motion and a second made. Any comments or discussion from the council? Roll call, please, Ann.
It's an important, it is.
Oh, wait, hang on.
You can do a roll call.
Yeah. Okay.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Kano.
Aye. Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 11G, the appointment to the Cemetery Board. The town received one application for one vacancy on the Cemetery Board. The chair of the Cemetery Board and the Public Works Director recommend the appointment of Thomas Parks. If there are no objections, I would like to appoint her to the Cemetery Board.
No objections.
Being no objections, she is hereby appointed. The next item, 11H, is the appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The town received 3 applications for one vacancy. The Community Development Department and the Chair of the P and Z Commission, recommend the appointment of Simon Wheaton Smith. If there are no objections, I would like to appoint him. There being no objections, he is hereby appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This concludes the business of the town of Silver City. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are hereby adjourned.